The NCAA tournament will stay at 68 teams in 2026 in a rare win for sanity in college athletics.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, a daily national college hoops show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host for today's show, Andy Patton, and you are joining at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. I want to thank all of you for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Of course, give a special shout out to those everyday listeners as well as those hanging out with us in the Locked On College Basketball Discord community. Reminder, it is free to join. Also, speaking of free, if you want to listen to the show ad-free, you can check it out on Amazon Music. Well, we got a pair of Texas programs adding guards to their roster for the upcoming season. We'll dissect both of those moves for Texas Tech and Texas A&M in the second segment. We also got a six-pack to close out the show, some various transfer portal commitments, a pair of decommitments, as well as a player getting an extra year of eligibility. All that coming to close out the show, rounding out some of the headlines around college basketball in the last couple of days. But we do lead today's show with the big news that came out on Monday morning, August 4th, that the NCAA tournament will not be expanded for the upcoming 25-26 college basketball season. The decision was made via a Zoom call on Monday and was revealed by NCAA Senior Vice President for Basketball Operations, Dan Gavitt, who released a statement on Monday that said the following, quote, "Expanding the tournament fields is no longer being contemplated for the 2026 men's and women's basketball championships. However, the committees will continue conversations on whether to recommend expanding to 72 or 76 teams in advance of the 2027 championships." So first things first, we are happy with this. We are celebrating this, at least here on Locked On College Basketball. The majority of people, according to many, many polls and surveys and various conversations out in the world, have indicated that they do not want the NCAA tournament to be expanded. This is not a popular idea, expanding the NCAA tournament. And yet it has been talked about ad nauseum for the last 3 years as people, specifically SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, as well as a few other powerful people in college athletics, want to line their pockets with more money and have realized that getting more of their teams into the NCAA tournament will in turn make their conference and themselves more cash. And so there's been this big push to expand the tournament. And while it has been, again, not a widely popular opinion, it's not something that fans are desiring. It's not something that players are desiring, coaches, really analysts, people who cover the sport. It's just not a popular thing. And it hasn't been in any of the last 3 years as they've been continuing to try to push it. So it's nice to see that the committees hopefully took into account the overwhelming lack of popularity that expansion has at this point and made the decision to push off expanding. And I say it like that. And you can call me a pessimist. That's okay. I can tolerate that. But this is a delay. I have a hard time imagining that the future for the NCAA tournament will stay at 68 indefinitely. I mean, I think it's not bold to say someday in the future, like, sure, yeah, eventually things will change. But I mean, like in the next 5 years, I'd be pretty surprised if the NCAA tournament is still at 68 teams. 3 years to me feels like if we got 3 more years of the NCAA tournament staying at 68 teams, I'd feel pretty good about that. I'm more inclined to think that this may be a delay as quick as 1 year, and that in 2027, the NCAA tournament will in fact expand. They just weren't able to get the votes necessary to do it in 2026, which is, again, a good thing. I think it means there was enough people on these committees who said, hey, this isn't what people want, and we don't want to vote for something that will, make rich people or already rich people richer while disappointing the thousands of people who follow this sport, the people who love March Madness, who love making off it bracket pools. Like, they don't want this, and we don't want to alienate the people who are watching this sport. And so it's good to see that won out at least for 1 more year. Matt Norlander of CBS Sports wrote a fantastic article reacting to this news. He also had some sources indicate to him something that I wanted to highlight here as well, that the decision for expansion reportedly is not between 68 teams, 72 teams, or 76 teams, as much as it's between staying at 68 or expanding to 76. According to Norlander's article, he said sources told him the long-term decision is going to ultimately come down to whether we remain at 68 or move to 76. Increasing to 72, quote, while not officially off the table, isn't seen as a worthwhile endeavor and is regarded as a long shot third option. So to me, what this means is essentially there's a group who wants to stay at 68. And there is a group who wants to expand. And that group that wants to expand, they don't want to have this conversation again 3 years from now. They don't want to just take a little expansion, a little 4-team expansion, one more final, or one more first 4 spot, 4 more teams, couple more games, expand to 72, and then have to work all over again to convince that same group of people to expand again to 76. They said, let's do it in one shot. We're either staying at 68 or we're adding 8 teams. We're blowing this thing all the way up to 76. And I think the fact that they are kind of eliminating that middle area is good for the hopes of it staying at 68, because 8 teams being added to the tournament is a much more difficult endeavor. It costs more money up front. It is more difficult in terms of finding a venue and scheduling these games. I mean, again, if you have Selection Sunday on Sunday and you have the 64-team field starting on Thursday, you really only have 2 days. You have Tuesday and Wednesday. Those are kind of the only days. You're not going to get any games on Monday. You can't turn it around that fast from Selection Sunday. So you got Tuesday and Wednesday to get a bunch of games in. If you're expanding to 72, it's doable. 76, it's still doable. It's still doable. That's 12 extra teams that need to be whittled down, 6 games that need to be whittled down to get you from 76 to 64 before things get started on Thursday. But that's logistically, again, it's a challenge. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of, figuring out travel and accommodations and all of that. And so I do think that there is some hope that maybe they'll be able to fend off 76 because of the added kind of pressure and added challenge that getting up to 76 would do. Whereas I think 72 is kind of that middle ground of like, fine, we can't get you to budge. You can't get us to budge. Let's just do 72, call it good, see how it goes and move on from there. And it does feel like, as Norlander alluded to, like it's a long shot third option because it means that both sides would have to agree to not quite get what they want. And the likely outcome is that one of these sides is going to win out. For 2026, good one out. Staying at 68 teams, one out. Will that be the case in 2027? Hard to say. I think it's about 50-50 at this point. Again, by 2030, I think we're going to be looking at 76 teams in the NCAA tournament. By that point, who the heck knows what's going to be going on with conference realignment? That's when I think a lot of these chips are going to fall with the ACC, and we'll see what's going on with the new look Pac-12 at that time. But at this point, I mean, again, NCAA tournament expansion is about getting more mediocre power conference teams in the NCAA tournament. If NCAA tournament expansion was going to be good news for UC Irvine or Indiana State or San Francisco or Santa Clara or other teams like that are consistently, or at least in recent history, have been good enough where they probably deserved a bid, but were left out. If I felt confident that expansion was going to help those teams, I would be more inclined to be in favor of it. But it's unlikely to happen. Does that mean that Irvine last year would have been left out if we expanded to 76? Not necessarily. They might have snuck in. 2 years ago, I think Indiana State probably would have snuck in, and that would have been good. That's a good thing that those teams probably would have made it. But also last year, I know as Indiana would have made it, West Virginia would have made it. And I can't help but think about the fact that one of the main people spearheading this movement to increase the NCAA tournament is Greg Sankey, who last year in a 68-team field got 14 of his 16 SEC teams into the NCAA tournament. The gall to continue to push a movement that is wildly unpopular among fans of the sport in order to try to get more teams from your conference into the tournament, when in the previous year, 14 of your 16 teams made it. I mean, it just feels flagrantly greedy and kind of gross. Like, I don't know how else to put it. It just feels gross. We can have a conversation about whether those 14 teams deserve to make it. I don't think there was any particularly egregious teams. The SEC was very good last year. I'm not trying to talk crap about that conference. I think it is worth noting that all the teams that were 7 seeds or lower, I think in the SEC went a combined 1-6 last year. Vanderbilt lost. Georgia lost. The only team that won out of that group was Arkansas. Shout out John Calipari and the Hogs for getting a couple of W's as the 10 seed, but the bottom half of the SEC did not do great when they got into the tournament, and a 6-14 big Oklahoma team made it into the tournament. And we're saying we want more of that. I have a hard time with it. It's not my vote, but we got one more year of this thing staying at 68 teams. And for now, we're going to celebrate that. We'll worry about 2027. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But for right now, folks who are happy that this tournament is not expanding can celebrate for another day, another year, as this tournament stays at 68 teams, at least through 2026. Well, folks, Texas Tech already had an argument for the best backcourt in the Big 12, and Coach Grant McCaslin's latest addition solidifies things even more in Lubbock. We're going to talk about that coming up in just a second. But first, folks, do you ever wish managing your money just felt a little bit easier? Because with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning for a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's kind of like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility of and control over your finances. And Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also helping build wealth. I found that I just love having everything in one place. I don't want to have to go to multiple different apps to have a spreadsheet where I'm tracking things, to be able to try to have to lose track of where everything is. Just put it all in one spot for me, please. And thank you. That is what I love about Monarch Money. It makes managing that day-to-day just so much easier. So take control of your finances, folks, by using Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com and you'll get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On College Basketball Podcast, moving away from our conversation about the NCAA tournament staying at 68 teams for the upcoming 25-26 college basketball season to instead talk about a pair of additions in the backcourts for a pair of schools in Texas. We'll start with Texas Tech. Grant McCaslin and the Red Raiders went out and got themselves a high school recruit, a late player in the 2025 class, heading out to Lubbock, Texas. That would be Jaylen Petty. Petty's a 4-star guard from Rainier Beach in Seattle, Washington, 6-foot point guard. Rainier Beach, by the way, shout out the home of Brandon Roy, of Nate Robinson. Prolific amount of talent in the greater Seattle area has come from Rainier Beach. Jaylen Petty hoping to be next in line. 126th ranked player in the 2025 recruiting class, according to 247 Sports. They had him 135th in their composite rankings, a little lower at On3/Rivals. They had him down at 170th. The reason Petty was still available, he has gone through a couple of schools already. His path to Lubbock was a little circuitous, but here we are. He committed to New Mexico initially out of high school, was planning to go join the Lobos. And then, of course, Coach Richard Pitino leaves New Mexico to go take the head coaching job at Xavier to join the Big East, where his father, Rick Pitino, is, of course, the head coach at St. John's. And so New Mexico, despite bringing Eric Orem, who was the very successful head coach at UC San Diego, they were not able to keep Jaylen Petty committed. He decommitted and then ended up committing to Stanford to go play for Coach Kyle Smith in the ACC. However, in June, Petty decommitted once again from the Cardinal and became available in June. Again, always nice to see 4-star high schoolers showing up available in the middle of the summer. And it's been kind of known, the connection between Petty and Texas Tech has been there for a while. So this wasn't, anybody who's really plugged in with Texas Tech was not surprised to see this announcement finally come to fruition, as it had kind of been rumored and talked about for a while, but still nice to finally have it, you know, the T's dotted, the I's dotted, all that, as Petty is officially headed to Lubbock to join the Red Raiders, joining a very new look backcourt For Coach Grant McCasland, Petty's kind of a more traditional point guard. He's a pass-first guy. He's looking to facilitate. He's looking to get his teammates involved. He can score if he needs to, but that's not really his game. And I think that was kind of one of the few needs on this Texas Tech roster, was more of a facilitating pass-first point guard type. And again, it's a very new look backcourt for Texas Tech. They do have 3 guards returning to the roster, one of them being Christian Anderson, who we have spoken a lot about on the podcast recently as a potential big-time sophomore breakout candidate after he was great last year as a freshman and then balled out for Germany in the FIBA Euro Cup games a few weeks ago. Christian Anderson looks like he's going to be a huge, huge part of Texas Tech's team this upcoming season. But the other 2 returners are Jazz Henderson, who did not play last year, and Leon Horner, who played very little. So really only one significant contributing returner in the backcourt for Texas Tech, but they add some really talented incoming transfers. Donovan Atwell coming over from UNC Greensboro. John Rothstein projects him to start at the 2 with Anderson at the 1. And then Washington State wing Lawan Watts, who's kind of a versatile do-it-all type 3. He's projected to start at the 3 for this team. And then Tyree Bryan from Santa Clara, who we spoke about as a junior breakout a senior breakout in the Big 12 on Monday's episode of Locked On College Basketball. Bryan, a very prolific 3-point shooter who's going to be coming off the bench most likely for the Red Raiders. They also add 3-star shooting guard Nolan Groves. So it's a deep backcourt. It's a talented backcourt. If Anderson has that breakout that many are expecting him to have, this is going to be one of the better backcourts in the Big 12. It's going to be tough to compete with Houston, with their star freshmen Kingston Flemings and Isaiah Harwell, as well as returners Milos Uzan and Emmanuel Sharp. Certainly Kansas, Darren Peterson coming in. If Elmarco Jackson can take a leap, that's going to be a great backcourt as well. But this Texas Tech team is very deep, very talented. And while Jaylen Petty is probably not a big-time contributor right away, he is a talented guard from a basketball-rich area in Seattle, and a nice addition this late in the offseason for Coach McCasland. Texas A&M also brought in a new guard, not from the recruiting ranks, however, from the transfer portal. That would be Noah Shelby. Shelby's a 6'3" guard who was at Kansas last year, but redshirted. He actually entered the portal not that long ago as a designated student athlete. Was very few players who entered this kind of new transfer portal window based on the House settlement, but Shelby was one of them. And now he ends up landing at Texas A&M, joining Rylan Griffin and Zach Clements, who were both at Kansas last year alongside Shelby, who are now all 3 together for Coach Bucky McMillan and the Texas A&M Aggies. Shelby was a former top 150 prospect. He spent his freshman year at Vanderbilt playing in 14 games and averaging about 4 points. And then he transferred to Rice, played 30 games at Rice, but only about 12 minutes per game for the Owls. Averaged about 4 points, shot 33% from 3. Transferred again, this time landed at Kansas, sat out last year. So now he will be playing his 3rd year as a senior at Texas A&M again. Will be reuniting with his former teammates Griffin and Clements from last year's team. Also a very new look overall roster for A&M, as you would expect after losing Coach Buzz Williams to Maryland. And then bringing in Bucky McMillan from Samford. He's bringing Bucky Ball with him. A lot of talented players joining this A&M roster. Mackenzie Mbako, Pop Isaacs, Rashawn Ajee from USC, Federico from Texas Tech, Jakari Lane from North Alabama, Marcus Hill from NC State. Josh Holloway is the lone player following Coach McMillan from Samford to A&M. Shelby's just added depth. I don't think you're expecting a big role for him. He's not going to redshirt again like he did last year for Kansas. I assume not anyway. If he was going to redshirt there, he probably would have transferred somewhere else. But I wouldn't expect him to be a big-time player for this team. But nice to bring somebody in who likely was given favorable reviews from guys like Griffin and Clements, who said, hey, yeah, we like him, bring him in, like he's a talented kid or a good teammate, whatever it may be. Having some more familiarity, like more continuity on your roster is still a very a roster that does not have a lot of that continuity, of course, but now 3 of these guys have at least been together as teammates from last year. So that always helps a team potentially gel a little bit quicker. So maybe not the most impactful addition for A&M, but again, anytime you can bring in a guy in late July or early August, as this move was made, who is going to bring some camaraderie, who has had some success, not a ton of it, but has played played in the SEC already, was on a Big 12 roster last year, did some good things for a decent Rice program. Like, that's a pretty good player to be able to bring in August to add into the mix. So nice pair of additions here for these two Texas programs. Jaylen Petty going to Texas Tech, and now Noah Shelby going to Texas A&M. Not the only teams that made big additions over the last week or so, though. North Carolina lands a 7-footer from Croatia. Dayton secured arguably the best player available in the transfer portal. We're going to break those down and a few others in our weekly 6-pack to close out the show, coming up in just a second. But first, folks, it is time to fuel up and turn it on with 5-Hour Energy's Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick and energizing shot. So whether you're sinking birdies or just out making memories with your friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. And let's be honest, some days out on the course or off the course, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. I'm not a particularly good golfer, but I love going out, hanging out with my friends, and that's kind of what golf's all about. Good times with good people and good flavors. And the grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without having to chase down the beverage cart. And if you go to 5hourenergy.com today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF for 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. So whether you're meeting up with your friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost that you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On College Basketball Podcast. Closing out the show, doing a 6-pack. It's been a while since we've done a 6-pack. These are pretty common in the season and during the heavy transfer portal season when we kind of want to collect a handful of news items and toss them together all at once. Had a few things that broke over the weekend, some transfer moves, a couple of decommits, a couple of commitments, so figured we would toss them in here on Tuesday's show. We'll start with Keontae Jones. This is probably the most notable move that happened over the last couple of days that wasn't at a school in Texas. Keontae Jones transfers to Dayton. He's a 6'6" wing, from CSUN, Cal State Northridge. Last year for the Matadors, he averaged about 13 points, 9 boards, and 4 assists. Very, very productive player. Also averaged nearly 2 steals and over 1 block per game. He did shoot 38% from 3. Granted, that was on just 1 attempt per game, but solid 3-point shooter, good scorer, great rebounder, over 4 assists per game, does a little bit of everything. He was a freshman in 23-24 and had similar production, 11.5 points, 7 boards, 2 assists per game as well. And so after 2 great years in the Big West at CSUN, Keontae Jones entered the transfer portal and fairly quickly committed to USC and Coach Eric Musselman's club. Not a surprise that they went after a guy who was so productive in the same state. But then Keontae Jones ended up decommitting from USC after they brought in some other players and kind of hung around available in the transfer portal for quite a while before he now lands at Dayton with the Flyers, joins 2 other transfer additions in Rutgers guard Jordan Durkak and NC State guard Bryce Hurd for this Flyers team. A really, really good player to be joining a team with this kind of talent already on the roster this late in the offseason. Feel for those other A-10 teams that thought, hey, we might have a chance against Dayton this year, and seeing them bring in a guy with this level of productivity can't make it all that fun on the scouting report for those clubs. Next up, North Carolina brings in a big man, 7-foot Croatian Ivan Matlakovic, coming over from High Point. He is a 7-footer, like I said, from Croatia. He only played 5 games last year for High Point, just 6 minutes a game, 2.5 points, and a little under 2 rebounds per game. He previously played in the FIBA U18 tournament for Croatia, but wasn't very productive there either. In fact, only 1.5 points and a little over 1 rebound per game. This is a low-risk move for North Carolina to add their 13th player to the roster. I think if you look at this move through the lens of like, well, typically a team like North Carolina is not bringing in guys who barely played at a school like High Point and weren't even very productive internationally. Sure, that's true. But Matt Lakovic is not going to be a big-time player for North Carolina. They're not bringing him in to play big minutes or really play at all necessarily. He is just some added depth. Anytime you can get a 7-footer as added depth to your roster, I think you feel good about it. He's also 21 years old. If he was 18, I think you'd feel even better about this. But at 21, it's like, all right, the upside's pretty limited here, but let's see what we can get out of him. Let's see if we can find a way. Maybe there's something they saw in his tape that they just really like, and they think, maybe there's something there. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Again, I don't think this is a move that needs to be intensely scrutinized, other than it's not exactly the player you'd want, but they already went out and got Henry Vasar from Arizona, who's going to be the big time player for them up in the front court. And just getting another international guy who can come in, potentially unlock some upside with him. And if not, he's just another big body that you can use in practice. Next up, third transfer commitment to talk about here is Daniel Rivera transferring to UAB, joining Alabama Birmingham after spending his first season at Bryant and his second season last year at UMass. Last year for the Minutemen, he played 29 games, averaged about 12 points, 7.5 boards, 2 assists, 1.5 blocks per game. He was similarly very effective at Bryant as well. Great rebounder, very good scorer, really good athletic wing, 6'6", who can rebound the heck out of the basketball. This is a really nice addition for the Blazers of UAB in the American Athletic Conference, but it does come with a cost for UAB, because now we've talked about 3 commitments. We're going to talk about a pair of decommitments, the first one happening at UAB. They bring in Daniel Rivera, and in the process, they lose Paul Jobay. Paul Jobay, 6'7" wing from Miami. He committed to UAB as their only transfer portal commitment earlier in the offseason, and is now departing after they bring in Daniel Rivera. Has not been confirmed that that's why, but I think it's pretty easy to read between the lines here and see that perhaps Jobay felt like his playing time was going to take more of a hit than he wanted with Rivera coming into the mix. Last year for Miami as a sophomore, Jobay averaged 5.5 points, 2.5 boards, and 1 assist per game, played 16 minutes per night. He spent 2 years at Miami. He's a career 39% three-point shooter as a 6'7" wing. That alone should get him attention. Not a super high volume for Jobay, but if you can shoot 40% from 3 and you are 6'7" and you are one of the only players available in the transfer portal or just in general in early August, teams are going to come calling. He's going to find himself a spot. And so too is Ahmad Bynum. Bynum also decommitted recently. He decommitted from Southern Illinois, 6'3" guard who was a former top 100 recruit in the 2022 class. Started his career at DePaul, but didn't play much for the Blue Demons, and then actually transferred to a junior college, balled out at the junior college level, came back to the D1 level to play for UTEP last year. And with the Miners, Bynum averaged 10.3 points and shot 44% from 3 on over 5 attempts per game. There are very few players in college basketball who shot over 40%, never mind over 44% from 3 on over 5 attempts per game. I remember early in the offseason, only a few weeks after the transfer portal was open, the number of players who shot over 40% from 3 with over 5 attempts per game who were still available in the transfer portal was 0. Those dudes flew off the board. And now it's August 4th. As I'm recording this, August 5th, as many of you are listening to this, and one of those guys is available. Yes, there's not a lot else to Bynum's game. He's not a great scorer outside of this. Very inefficient 2-point scorer. Does not pass. He's 6'3" and has got less assists or more turnovers than assists in his career. He's not a point guard. He is purely a 3-point specialist. But there are plenty of teams that could use a little bit more shooting on their roster that may give Bynum a call now that he's decommitted from Southern Illinois. And last on our 6-pack here, we talked about 3 commitments, 2 decommitments. So now we'll talk about a player getting a waiver approved. Always happy to see guys get another chance to stick it out in college basketball. Gaitis Nemaiksa, gets a waiver to return to the Rainbow Warriors of Hawaii. Nemaiksa played for Hawaii last year, started his college career at Xavier as a freshman, 6'7" forward from Lithuania. Last year for Hawaii, averaged about 12.5 points, 5.5 boards, and 1 assist in 23 minutes per game. He was Hawaii's leading scorer. So for them to find out they're getting their leading scorer back into the mix in early August, that's a good day. That's a good day for the Hawaii basketball program in their final year in the Big West. They're going to be competing out in that conference, competing with the UC Irvines, the UC San Diegos of the world. Should be fun to see them get a chance to do that and to see Gaitis back in the mix for that Rainbow Warriors team. It's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On College Basketball Podcast. Folks, thank you so much for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. As a reminder, hit that subscribe button on YouTube so you get notified every time we got a new episode out. It is very much appreciated. Isaac's got a couple shows coming your way next on Wednesday and Thursday. Fun interview with the player, as well as an interview with our good friend Leaf on Wednesday. And then Isaac and I will be back with you all on Friday for the rest of our senior breakout candidates in college basketball. Don't miss out. Thanks again, folks. As always, we want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes. Cheers to the McBruins. And until next time, peace out.